Collins, and joining me today, he's back. He took 1 week off, but Mr. Kevin Durso has returned. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good to have you back. I missed you last week.
Yeah, I miss being on. I was already, one of the things I was all dedicated about with this going into last weekend was, I was at the rink on my birthday on Saturday. I'm like, I'm going to spend the day after on the
Happy
podcast.
belated, by the way. We didn't
Thank
mention
you.
it on the show.
And, it's like I was all planning to do that. I don't take days off just because it's my birthday. I don't care. Like, I'm not that type of person. There was a game on the night of my birthday. I was happy to be there.
If our listeners don't know, Kevin is Mr. No Days Off. He told me something before the show, which we're not announcing right now, but he is already Mr. No Days Off. He's about to go to Mr. No Hours Off. He's going to be a very busy man coming up here shortly.
Well, and I'm like going to be helping put together some stuff with the editing of this one too. So, having to put that together too,
But either way, it's good to have you back. And
it's good to be back.
For the first time this season, I feel like we actually have real hockey to talk about.
I think so.
Yeah, because the first couple of weeks, we knew, even coming into the season, we knew that this season was going to be a little bit of a rough start. It was a rough start for every team with no training camps and stuff. But now we're 3 or 4 weeks into the season. We've got a little bit of game under our belt here. We're approaching the quarter mark of the season, and the team is finally starting to play good hockey, and it's a miracle.
Yeah, Tuesday's already the quarter mark of the season, so it's like, how quickly you get from one spot to the other. I mean, we're not even a month into the season yet, and we're talking about it being a quarter of the way over.
Right.
It's pretty – I mean, everything's going really fast. It feels like these last few games have flown by. Last week, I know that I was off the show last week because I needed a little bit of a – not a little bit of a break, but I had some things come up, and I did include something about that in the early going of my last game or my first game preview after coming back with it on Wednesday night, I think it was, before the Bruins game on Wednesday.
Sorry, are you talking about the game preview that you put up on our YouTube channel at YWT Podcast?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about.
Where you can also find my post video, post-game videos at YWT Podcast on YouTube. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I explained in the Friday's video and in today's video, which I recorded literally like an hour and a half before the game because I was like, wanted to do it last night and ended up not being able to. So I'm like, oh, I'll just get it done. And I was waiting patiently because I wanted to do it yesterday afternoon, but all of this secrecy about who was possibly going to play and who wasn't kind of held me back a little bit for a while. I'm on both sides.
Practice was interesting.
Yeah, but on both sides too, because there was stuff coming out of Washington's side too that I'm like, I got to hold back on this. I can't say who I think is in and who's not and whatever, So it was kind of a wait and see kind of game. But I did mention how today was going to be a very busy day because we already had the game preview up. You still did a post-game video, even though we're recording this. But this is more for the broad spectrum of the week where we actually get to talk back and forth because we're not really on each other's videos. Right. And the everything else too, like today's game, but also the two before it. And a couple other things that we need to talk about too, because I think our schedule got a little rearranged for the coming weeks too, because we've got some things to clean up there. The
NHL moved some games around, and we already were going to have an interesting time with when we're doing this podcast, and the NHL decided to make it worse.
Yeah. Actually, the thing is that the next couple of weeks we had kind of clean lined up because there's, Sunday is a very popular day this year for games, but lot of
we're recording this after a noon game against the Capitals.
But that's a good part. That's what I was about to say is that you got noon starts, you got 3 p.m. starts. The 3 p.m. starts, we kind of figured we might be able to do, we're kind of weighing it, whether we're going to go live or not, but we're not sure yet. But even so, it still allows us the window.
I think we'll definitely be going live after that Lake Tahoe game, by the way.
We might have to because, one of the funny things I guess I want to talk about right away, if we're going to go into the results from the previous week and so
Absolutely.
on is, that if the Flyers didn't play the Boston Bruins, they're off to an incredible start, aren't they?
And they're already off to a very good start. I was
there
last week looking at this team going, how are they 7-2-1 or 7-2-2, wherever they were last week? And, we saw Boston 2 more times this week, so it didn't go well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something else for a minute because I believe that you guys recorded last week on Saturday night after the Saturday game, right? Correct. And which, by the way, was part of the plan anyway. We weren't going to do it on Saturday night. Possibly, we were still going to do our Sunday morning record, but we were going to record ahead of the Sunday night
game. Wasn't going to be involved anyway,
right? Which, by the way, I didn't even think about. Like, we can still highlight that one, too, because it wasn't highlighted on the last show. I didn't even think about that for a minute.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk
There's been so many games this week already. I mean, we're 3 games in, and it's been 3 in the last,
We have a full 4 games to talk about because we have last Sunday and then the 2 against Boston.
I
and
think
then
it's because I'm thinking about
the Capitals.
I think it's because I'm thinking about the 4 that are coming up this week too. That I'm going, oh my goodness, like how much I got those to look ahead to. Like there's a lot to look ahead to as well.
56 game schedule, only X
yeah,
number of weeks.
56 game schedule that you need done by May. Welcome to the shortened season.
And we already see the NHL rearranging times to fit.
Well,
again, the Flyers haven't even necessarily been super affected, knock on wood,
right?
But rearranging to fit the broader league schedule. We've already seen some of that, and we can expect more as the season moves along.
So where I was trying to go with that also was that, so you guys came on and you did the show after last Saturday's game, and I believe that you guys had the same sentiment that I did when I walked in, because I walked in I was at my parents' last weekend, and I walked in and I just, in talking to my dad about it, I shrugged my shoulders and I went, I don't even know how. I literally don't even know how they won that game. And
correct.
That's kind of the sentiment of it. And I feel like we can say that about a lot of them. I felt that way on Sunday. I felt that way on Wednesday for a portion, because they were.
I feel that way with pretty much every game they've won this season.
And I kind of feel that way today, because today I'm sitting here going, how ugly that game could have turned out to be when Alex Ovechkin is doing whatever he wants to do because he's that good, and we know that.
I said in my post-game video, which you can find on our YouTube channel, that Ovi did Ovi things today, like bad. He was good today.
I wanted to tweet it, and there wasn't a good time to do it because it was more jokey, which I'm not the funny guy normally, but it was more jokey, and I'm like, I don't want to say it in a time where either A, we're at a critical point in the game, and also the Flyers kept kind of coming back and making it interesting again.
It was a very interesting game.
Right, every time there seemed to be a break, and I could fit a joke in. It's like, well, there's too much anger about what just happened, and oh, by the way, look, here they came and they scored a goal anyway, so it doesn't matter, But I was going to make the joke that since I believe I can't remember who I called this. I think I said David Pastrnak was out of a video game the other night at one point in time, and I really wanted to make the joke today because all I was going to sit there and say is Ovi's in NHL 21 mode.
Yeah,
he's in NHL 21 mode basically.
He at one point the second goal he scored where he just bullies by Phil Myers and just absolutely.
Well, yeah, he set that one up, so that was his fourth.
Second point. The second point he had. I'm sorry, where he just bullies Phil Myers and makes him look silly. First of all, that's nothing on Phil Myers because that's happened to every defenseman in the NHL, especially with a guy like Alexander Ovechkin bearing down on you.
It's less about Myers and more about everybody else, quite honestly.
Well, sure. But I just mean Myers was the guy who's in the highlight. So he might come out of this looking bad and he shouldn't. But Alexander Ovechkin just decided that he was getting to the net and getting the puck in the net somehow, even if it wasn't him doing it. And when a player like that, when the greatest goal scorer maybe in NHL history decides that he wants the puck in the net, sometimes the puck just goes in the net. And he was on another level today.
I don't know how long he's going to decide to play for. It could be for a while, obviously. I mean, he's 35 years old, and he could.
It might be one more season.
I don't think it will be. I see this guy playing until he's 40.
All right, right here, right now. Does he break the record?
If he plays until 40, I think he's got a legit shot.
That's not what I'm asking. Does he break the record? Does he do it? Does he play long enough?
You know what? No, you know what? I've been a skeptic for a long time on that because there's a lot of records that Wayne Gretzky has that I firmly believe will never be broken. And among them is the overall points total. Ovechkin could do great things for the next 5 years if he wanted to.
Oh, he won't sniff the point total.
And he won't get close to the point total because unless you're going to also pick up the number of assists that Wayne Gretzky had, which the well-documented story of that is that you could take all of the assists and he would still be first on the list.
You could take every single goal Wayne Gretzky ever scored away, and he's still the NHL's leading career scorer.
Right.
And that's absurd. And we all know that. No, Ovi will never touch the point total, but do you think he
won't touch the point total, and he won't touch things like, I don't think he'll touch things like 50 and 50 because I just don't think it's that popular anymore.
37?
Well, yeah, exactly. Like that's absurd, But
insane.
But the fact that he's now up to, I believe what they put it up there, 7-11 now.
7-10, he scored 7-10 and 7-11 today.
Right. So he's at 7-11 after today, and recently, I believe it was like maybe a game or two ago, he passed Mike Gartner for 7th all time now. So he's only got 6 guys in front of him. I believe the next 2 in line are Phil Esposito and Marcel Dion.
Right.
And he's like closing in on that
He'll
list
pass him
too. I
this
mean,
season.
right? They're the last two who don't have right. They're the last two who don't have 800, maybe,
They're
or
the
something like
last
that.
two under 8. Yeah,
I believe, or something like that. It's close. It's really close. There might be three. There might be three guys with 800 because it's Gordie Howe. It's obviously Wayne Gretzky. It's Gordie Howe, and then I believe there's one more. It's not Yager. It's like
I'm pulling it up. There are two gentlemen in NHL history with 800 goals, and they are
okay. There you go. It's Gordie Howe and
Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
Yager has 766. Hull has 741.
All right, there you go. Yeah, that's
Dion,
what I was thinking.
731. Espo 717, and ESPN hasn't updated yet. Alexander Ovechkin had two more today, and
So he's at 711. So he's 6 behind Esposito already. You know, like, and let's not forget.
It looked like he was going to do it today.
At times, yes. And let's not forget, he missed 4 games. You know, so he came in, and I pointed it out when I did the pregame video and in my articles because I made him my player to watch today, which, as I've said before, like I was texting about this earlier at one point in time when the Boston games rolled around. I made Pasternak my player of the game, or player to watch on Wednesday, and I went, yeah, you know, I hate being right sometimes, you know, but kind of got to watch that guy. And I even said in the pregame video, you know, to look at the numbers from the last 5 games or whatever, and I go, Ovechkin only has 3 goals this season. That doesn't seem right, does it? You know, coming in, it just doesn't seem right. But
it doesn't seem right. Okay, I'll fix that for you, Kev.
Well, no, because my, you know, my whatever I'm looking for here, you know, my condition on that was
you need to stop picking good players as players of the game. So
I mean,
you're either a psychic or you're making this happen because. You picked Pasternak Wednesday. You picked Pasternak Friday after mentioning that you don't normally pick the same player 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
And then you come out here and pick Ovi again. And all 3 games, they lit the Flyers up like a...
And I almost didn't want to pick Ovechkin because I thought it was easy, but like, honestly, my thought was to pick somebody, not who was deeper in the lineup, but like, you know, it could be a Backstrom. It could be an Oshie. It could be somebody like that who didn't really miss time, who was able to play through the whole thing because maybe there's still something to that, you know. And that's not that, like, Ovechkin came back and scored an overtime winner,
right?
Recently enough, I think it was Saturday. It was the same day that the Flyers beat the Islanders in overtime for the first time over the weekend because there was that day. It was everybody. It was Ovechkin scored an overtime winner, McDavid scored an overtime winner, Crosby scored an overtime winner, and then oh by the way, Scott Lawton and some guy for Florida who I'd never heard of before,
right?
Who also had one, but it was like, but everybody was freaking out about the previous Saturday's games because it was not only did 3 of the biggest players in the league score in overtime, but there were 5 overtime goals in like the first 7 games played on a 10-game slate or 11-game slate. Like it was pretty insane. You know how many there were.
There's been a lot of overtime
and then they were back out there again in overtime the following night, which I guess we should, you know, we can hit on there too. You know, in that sense. It's funny to me. And, you know, the cool thing about today's game, and yes, I know Ovechkin had that kind of game, but the cool thing to me was that, you know, I mentioned it on the preview, not just for this game in particular, but I mentioned it ahead of Wednesday when they played Boston, that the next 4 were going to be really big because of the fact that you're playing 2 teams that have kind of consistently been at the top. And not only consistently been at the top, but it's like, this is your chance to show where you stand. And it's a shame that Sean Couturier wasn't ready for at least one of those Boston games to really get a feel for, because one of the conversations I've had with people about it is that, you know, for as bad as they've looked in certain situations or as sloppy as they've looked, one of the things that people fall back on is, but wait, there's no Couturier. So how do we know how to judge this team fully if when Sean Couturier returns, could he be like as good as we know he can be? Can that just turn the whole picture around? And obviously in the first game, it did not turn the whole picture around because they were still very disjointed. It was still very wide open. And part of that could very well be the style that Washington plays. They're kind of come at you the whole way, and it makes you be a little disjointed. I mean, the Flyers have scored 5 goals, and I'm taking out the round robin game, but go to the last 2 they played in Washington on the road last year, February and March. They scored 7 in one and 5 in the other. And now they scored 7 in this one. It's like they know how to score on this team. They're a disjointed team defensively too.
Yeah, and you can make a little bit of a caveat that Vitek Vanacek is not exactly Braden Holtby. So there's been a little bit of a shift from last year's team.
He's not, but he's surprised me with how good he's been throughout the early part of the year. Yeah. And you know, it was funny because I said it in the preview. I actually had a conversation with my dad the other night driving home from the Friday game. when I was down at the center, and I'm like, I don't know if something's in their head when they play Tuukka Rask that they've got to be perfect. And I can understand why, because you look at Tuukka Rask and you go, historically speaking,
you're playing against the perfection line. Of course, you do have to be perfect.
Well, yeah, I'd hear you, but I'm saying like the goalie in net though, he's got such success against you in his career, and he's got a history of it for upwards of 10 years now. So if he's got it that long of a history, it probably is in your head. We've really got to do everything we can to make the right play, because that's how you have to beat him. Like it doesn't surprise me that when they did score goals, it's perfect execution on an odd man rush. It's deflections. Things like that, right?
Right.
When it's Rask. I looked at Vanacek going into this game today, and my thing is that I know he's played really well, and I know that he's done some things right, and he's got a good number of wins to start a season. I knew it right from the start. I'm like, pepper this kid. You've got to just throw, and they didn't. That's the scary part.
No.
They didn't really pepper him, but they got themselves in a position where the things they did do right, where they drove the net better. There were guys constantly around the net. Rebounds were a big theme to this thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like a lot of it wasn't Vanacek's fault completely. Maybe the fourth one is one that you're going to sit there and go, okay, rolling puck. It's going high. It's a tough. I mean, it's picking a spot. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at it and going off the rush. You got to make a save on a shot that's unscreened, that's coming from high slot or just outside of the circles, or especially on the rebounds. It's not his fault. You know what I mean? I don't know which one they're trying to say he's got to stop per se, but they pulled him anyway because he gave up 4 on 14 shots.
Right, and I actually mentioned in my post game that if Vitek Vanacek was your backup and Ilya Samsonov was healthy and with the team and functioning as an active member of your roster, I can see pulling Vitek Vanacek in a game where he's been sketchy and allowed 4 goals on 14 shots.
Right.
But in a situation where Samsonov is still not cleared, we don't really know when he's going to be, and Vanacek is kind of your de facto starter for the next little bit here.
Well, when you're back,
if you're Peter Laviolette, how do you pull your starting goalie? I know he's not your long-term starter, but for right now, he's your starter.
Right.
How do you pull your starting goalie in a 1-goal game? Especially when, like you said, maybe you'd like to see a save on that fourth one, but I wouldn't say it's his fault necessarily.
Right. Well, and it's funny, especially also when your backup is Craig Anderson, who really is coming in cold. I think that was evident from the beginning, because not only did they score really early in the third period, and you got to remember it was only 2.5 minutes left in the period when they made this move anyway.
Anderson didn't have a ton of time to get his
You're
legs on
30 seconds into a period where you're still really trying to get warm.
Right.
He had one where he tried to glove it down and it hit off of his glove and went to the corner, and it wasn't exactly a hard shot.
And by the way, your team has scored and it's now a tie game.
Right. Well, it's a tie game, but they pulled him before that, and I can get that to an extent because Lavi always had a quick hook to begin with in a lot of situations.
Oh, yeah.
That was, to me, that was more of a look at the way you're defending, all that type of stuff, and, it was wide open. They got looks. I'll say that the shot volume wasn't all that high, but the looks were there, and they had opportunities, to do some things. And obviously, I don't care how many shots you take. If you found a way to score 7 goals, and what do you have, 24 shots, 23
You're doing
shots,
something right.
then you did something right, one way or another. And that's why what I liked was everything that Scott Lawton did in this game was go to the net, just be there when it's there. And 3 times it was there.
Right.
Well, I think your best 3 Flyers forwards this week all have something in common.
Okay.
And it's all that they're willing to drive the net. And I'm talking about Joel Farabee, Scott Lawton, and the guy who maybe had the best week, JVR.
I was going to say, let's put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I have to.
Because he's been, quite honestly, he's been the best player on this team this season.
You use the correct word in your header. JVR is resurging.
Yeah.
This is the JVR that the Flyers thought they were signing from the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The funny part to me is it's not a contract year, but it feels like one because of the expansion draft.
He knows.
He knows. And he's really putting his best foot forward right now.
And I'm glad because I will admit that I've been one of the people who has called for JVR to be a member of the Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it. I think he's probably getting paid a little too much. His production before this season had not warranted a spot for that money. And with all the kids they have coming up and all the contracts the Flyers are going to need to sign in the next couple of years,
I was definitely an advocate of trade a first round pick to Seattle to make them take JVR. And maybe I'm still okay with him going and being a member of the Seattle Kraken. But at this point, I'm certainly not trading a first round pick to get rid of him because he's been fantastic. He's been fantastic, and he knows his role, and he plays it very well. I don't know if there's a better role player in the National Hockey League than James Van Riemsdyk when he's good.
Yeah, it's the power play for him because he sets up shop in front of that, and it worked out really well in the, especially in the Friday game against Boston, because you needed to score on one of them eventually, and there he was in the right spot, and that's expert what he does. It's an expert elite tip drill. He's good at it. He's so good at it. And that's why you kind of keep him around. It's really rewarding for him because last year I think he was in good spots a lot, but couldn't seem to pull it off. He would try that between the legs stuff move that, a lot on the power play, and it never seemed to work for him. Even when he would get an opportunity off of it, it felt like it would never seem to work for him. He's getting anything he wants to get to go right now will go,
And even things that he's not even doing on purpose. Sometimes he's just there and it bounces off him and in because he's just having that kind of season.
Yeah.
But either way,
this has been really impressive.
Yeah, he's been living up to the money, which is important. And the fact that he's not being relied on as one of your top goal scorers, the fact that he's not. Okay, when the Flyers re-signed James Van Riemsdyk, when he came back over as a free agent from Toronto.
Right.
I think a lot of people were expecting him to slot into the top six and be, power play one, net front, top six, whatever. And he hasn't been that. And that's fine.
Right.
But the fact that he has settled into his role, and I know I've said role a bunch about JVR here, but the fact that he has settled into that role spectacularly is getting to the point where, remember last year at a certain point, we all decided that Kevin Hayes wasn't making too much money?
Yeah.
I think we're having that revelation this year with JVR, where we're kind of realizing maybe the contract's not that bad. And he hasn't played up to it yet.
Right.
But if he plays like he has been playing this season and, kind of through the duration of the contract, I'd be very happy with that at this point.
Right. And it's tough because he's going to still be one of the older guys, and you wonder how he's going to age through this contract completely. But you're on year 3 of this contract. You're on year 3 of a 5-year contract.
Right. You're almost there.
Where year 1 was kind of quietly really good because he had those surges that really brought the goal total up. Yeah, there were games where it wasn't there, but whatever.
He had a little Patrick Laine season where he showed up in bursts.
And then year 2, it's not completely there, but it's mostly, it's not that the effort wasn't there. It's just he's kind of getting really snake bit,
Yeah.
It just is what it is. It's funny because one of the things that I heard, or not heard, but one of the things, and it was right around the time, because Friday's game, it's mid-third period again, and Scott Lawton gets an opportunity in front of the net, and he doesn't elevate it enough. He elevates it a little, and Rask is so good at tracking when you're in that tight that, of course, he gets a piece of it, and he makes a save. And I got a comment on Twitter that was, Scotty needs to get one soon. Like, he just needs to get one. Like he's due for one at some point. Like he's really trying to get one. It's like, what does he got to do to get one at some point here? Like and I almost commented back with, well, he did get one a week ago. Like, it's not like it's been 3 weeks since he scored a goal. He did get one a week ago, but I understand where they're coming from. Like, you kind of thought that was going to open him back up for the type of season he had a year ago. And now here, look what happened here. He got 1, then he got 2, and then sure enough, later on in the game, he's in the right spot again, driving the net, and he's got 3.
Well, and that's the thing, is when you play like Scott Lawton plays, and like we've starting to see Joel Farabee play, and like we've kind of seen JVR play, when you drive to the net, good things happen. And, it's a cliche as old as hockey itself, right? Put it on net. You miss 100% of the shots you don't, whatever you want to call it, whatever cliche stereotype you want to use.
You just pointing that out because it's on the sign over my head.
Yeah. Go to the net and good things happen. And everyone has heard that since they were 5 years old and just started watching hockey. And when the pucks start bouncing, you're going to start getting bounces. And JVR had the execution all year, but just wasn't getting the bounces.
The two things that are different for me when it comes to those two players, as we're talking about, is that First of all, Scott Lawton still kind of slots into that role that's on the bottom six. So the goal scoring total as an overall big picture isn't the greatest thing in the world. It's not supposed to be. You don't expect it. Like, I don't even like, who cares about whether he scores a hat trick or not? If he has one or two or three, it doesn't make a difference. When he has one, you go, wow, depth, depth up front, depth at the forward position, depth at center, whatever you want to look at, right? I think one of the big differences was, first of all, Van Riemsdyk was first of all, he was billed as one of the top free agents in that class because it wasn't the biggest year for it. I believe that the only other guy who could top him among forwards anyway was, it was John Tavares' year, I believe.
Okay.
And that was it. Like, there's nothing else that could top it. He was right there, number 3, and that, like, well, that's a high ranking for a guy who I don't think you think is the biggest free agent name. I know he was a former number 2 pick. I know he was, had some really big successful seasons when he was in Toronto. I still don't think it makes a difference because you knew what his game was, and it's like, that's still the number 3 free agent on the market this year. Right. Like, okay, whatever. The other thing that's impressing me, first of all, I think this is who they build and be, because I think everybody saw the signing and went, here's a 35 goal scorer. Here's the goal scorer. They got a goal scorer, right? And then he's not the 35 goal scorer the first 2 years of the contract.
Right.
No matter how you want to look at it, whether you want to look at the fact that he was short of a number because they didn't play as many games or whatever, like, doesn't matter.
Right.
He wasn't that guy.
He wasn't the guy they signed out of Toronto.
And the thing about his game has been how for him specifically, it's always in bunches with him. It's here's 4 in the next 5 games, and then
15 games without one.
Well, and then 12 games over the next 3 weeks where there's nothing, right? This is as consistent as I've seen him as a Flyer, probably.
Yeah.
Like, to an extent. Because you're going on 14 games of your season, which let's just call it what it is, being in the shortened season. Let's just talk about it from a broad spectrum, whether we were talking about 20 games or 14 as the quarter mark of the season. He's at a goal every other game.
It's pretty good. That's a 40 goal pace over an 82 game season.
Right. That's what's expected.
That is the production that the Flyers signed him for, right? You signed him off of career high goals in Toronto. You signed him to kind of come and be a productive goal scoring member of this young, talented core that you're trying to put together.
Exactly. And
he's finally starting to be that.
And it's the fact that it doesn't seem to be slowing down either. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing for him to go and score in bunches. And there were times in previous years, I think about the very first year he was back, I believe is one where he would go out and score a hat trick in a game, and then 2 games with nothing, come back, here's a 2-goal game, here's 2 more, now another goal. And you go, he's got 7 in his last 8 games, but 3 were in one and 2 were in another. And you're still going,
he went 5 games without scoring any.
He's got a handful of multi-goal games, don't get me wrong, but he's on a point streak now that's like, I believe it's 7 games.
And again, for a guy like JVR who kind of relies on that tip, that almost luck, like not luck, obviously, because he's in a good position to make the play and he's very, very good at it.
Right.
But it's a job where when the bounces don't go your way, you go weeks without a bounce like that. But the fact that he's just been getting them is supremely great.
And what's also been impressive to me is, so he has a 2-goal game against New Jersey, scoring pretty much the exact same way. They're 2 deflections. And he doesn't score another goal again until the Boston game on Friday. And again, it's another deflection. And he scores the one today, and it's a good shot. And that's not what I'm impressed by. What I'm impressed by is in between the 2-goal game in New Jersey and the last 2 where he's had a goal in each. Now today he had a multi-point game, so I'm not trying to take that away, but you know what I mean? But I'm looking at it and going, assist against New Jersey, 1 assist against the Islanders on the 30th. 4 against the Islanders on the 31st.
We're going to talk about that game next, by the way.
2 against Boston on the Wednesday night. You're all of a sudden now you're not just JVR the goal scorer, you're JVR the playmaker. That's a side of your game I don't remember seeing a whole lot of early on in your career.
You're not JVR the net front presence. You are JVR the viable forward option. Look where he was on the goal today.
Look where he was on the goal today. He comes out he's in the neutral zone. He's kind of probably coming off the bench on a bit of a change, and it's a wide shot. Well, now you're in position to be part of a transition rush.
He
So
was the
you
whole
do
transition
right.
rush.
So you go up though, but he wins right. He had a moment in, I can't remember which Boston game it was, but he came in with a ton of speed, and you're going, that's as fast as I think I've ever seen you skate before.
Ever.
But he's got an energy to him right now because he's playing with so much confidence. He's one of the best parts of this, he's one of the best parts of this team right now. And like I said, for my money, he's the MVP of the team right now.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the guys who get into the game, I think the guy who matters the most is still Sean Couturier.
Well, no, sure. But even talking about the current team, I don't know. Because I mentioned that Islanders game last Sunday. JVR had 4 assists. The other guy who is in the running for this team's MVP so far is Joel Farabee, in my mind.
I've loved everything that Joel Farabee's done so far. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not saying
he had his first career hat trick last Sunday night against the Islanders. JVR assisted on all 3 of them.
Right. JVR. Okay, so JVR to me is currently the most valuable player for these last stretch of games. Joel Farabee is continuing to be what I said I thought he was going to be this year, which is he is this year's breakout player.
Yeah. And
he's becoming that guy. And down the road, he's got the potential to be, from a goal scoring standpoint, the most valuable goal scorer this team has, because you're seeing it now. You're seeing what Joel Farabee brings to this team. And the thing I've loved about it is that we can go back and talk about the hat trick that he had. He had a hat trick of assists today on all 3 of Scott Lawton's goals, and everything about his game is look where. And I even criticized the first goal to an extent because he's got a little bit of a bad angle. Don't get me wrong, but he's got wide open space in front of him, and you got a pretty good shot. Go ahead and fire away. You got nobody.
I wanted a shot there so bad,
and I'm sitting there thinking, here it comes, and he tries to make the pass, but you did start something that worked for you. And the way I phrased it on Twitter when I said something about it was, AV says don't critique a win, and I guess you shouldn't critique a goal either because the result is the right thing.
Right.
But the process of getting there, I love, because I don't care where you try to shoot. If you try to go top shelf, now granted, of course, there's a lot of things that can go wrong if you shoot there too from a poor angle. You could be trying to pick a corner, you hit the post, it bounces all the way out, you don't even get a chance off of it.
Right.
Maybe the way to go is keep it low. The puck's going to roll around in some capacity, and someone's going to be waiting there. You got 2 teammates with you, so maybe the pass does turn out to be the right play. So you don't critique a goal. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But the other 2 plays are exactly what you expect from him. First of all, the stick on the second one that Lawton scored, to just push it to him in the right direction. That's the hockey IQ. Yep. That's the hockey IQ that was talked about with him. And then on the third one, to go to the net, just drive the net and make a smart play because he kept it low.
I'm convinced Joel Farabee tossed that pass off the pads so that Lawton could bury it.
He might have, and that could be the hockey sense of him again.
Watching that play again, Joel Farabee had the 5-hole. Joel Farabee had a move to go glove side. Joel Farabee gently tapped it off the right pad where he knew Scott Lawton was going to be wide open, and put it right in his kitchen so Scott Lawton could slam home the third and get his first career hat trick.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty funny. This is already the 3rd guy who's gotten their first career hat trick this year.
Yeah.
It's happening with some pretty insane frequency here. But I want to go back to Farabee for a moment from his career numbers from it, because I saw this floating around Twitter a little bit, and I just pulled them up in front of me too. All right, so first of all, this year he's and he didn't score in the last couple of games. He scored on Wednesday, but he didn't score in the last couple. Right. And that's what makes it more impressive, because he's got 6 goals on the year in 12 games.
Yep.
And now I didn't realize this, I guess. Unless it wasn't updated, I believe it should have been. No, I guess it wasn't, because it's not on the NHL website. So he had 3 more assists today, which should bring him to 12 points, 6 and 6
in 13 games.
In 13 games,
getting very, very close to a point per game.
Right, so he's very close to a point per game player. But I believe the thing that was talked about here, or that would be mentioned, is that was his 65th career game. He's got 14 career goals, and now he'll have 33 career points in 65 games. And that's after playing a rookie year where you're feeling it out. You're still technically a teenager.
Working your way through the lineup.
Right. You're having to work your way through the lineup. You're not in a solidified spot yet. He's having this kind of season right now where he's going to establish his presence, and he's doing something that's really important to me right now, which is he's the one who's the young guy who's serving as not the stopgap, but he's kind of making up for the not growing pains, but the feeling out process and the and the confidence and all of the things that need to be built back up for Oscar Lindblom and Nolan Patrick for having not played for so long. He's like filling the void, like been there, done that, added strength. He made a play at one point in time, and I believe it didn't result in a goal, but it resulted in a scoring chance for JVR, where he's out-muscling someone in the corner, using his body to protect the puck, to work it back to the point where you can get another lead pass that gets Van Riemsdyk in with some space. And I even tweeted out right after I went, half of that play is him, and half of that play is look at the pounds I added over the summer. Look at the weight I added over the summer, and look at what I can do now that I'm stronger than I was. That's the added strength showing up.
He looks bigger, and he looks more comfortable driving the net. He looks more comfortable being in, they talk about the little home plate out from the goal, right? Up to between the slots. Joel Farabee is going to reside there.
Yeah, and not only that, but, I know that there was a lot made about the draft year following his when Cole Caulfield was out there and it was like, look what you could get or whatever.
I was a Cole Caulfield fan.
Well, I know, but the year before that, when it was Farabee's draft year, as the spot came up, that was like his range, and that was who was targeted a lot. And boy, I don't think they missed on this one. I think that they knew exactly what they needed at that moment, and call it Ron Hextall's parting, gift for you.
Yep.
Because he made the right call on this one after years of needing to find the defenseman that can slot in and be, whether they're top pairing, middle pairing, whatever you need, and trying to build that up. And you got to remember, when he did go forward in a couple situations, Nolan Patrick was plopped into his lap. You had to pick him there. Yeah. You had a top two pick. You knew who the top two guys were. You had to pick the one that was left. That was plopped into your lap.
I know with hindsight being 2020, yes, the Flyers should have probably taken Cale Makar because hello. But at the time,
either Cale Makar or Elias Pettersson.
I think this team needs Makar a little bit more currently, but I get it totally.
Well, you know what? They didn't need Makar as much when they had.
That's fair. When they were actually making the pick.
Well, and they didn't need Makar as much the year prior to the one we're watching now. Like if you go back to the previous year's team, and I don't really like to do that because of the fact that my thought is this: one guy is not changing some of the things that you see. Like you saw it even early on. Sean Couturier's back in this game. It doesn't mean that all of your problems were solved in one game.
No, certainly not.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that Matt Niskanen solves all of your problems right now either. But
no, and I don't even.
But I understand why people can look at the year before. Like I can look at the year before and tell you the team that was out there the year before defensively, with no injuries for the most part, with Provorov, Niskanen at the top, with Sanheim Myers continuing to try to grow as a middle pairing, and with Braun and Haig, or with whatever you could get in the third pairing, or however you have to line it up. That was not, I'm not saying good enough, but it's like, what you're going to have to do with Cale Makar down the line. You know what you're going to be paying him. And you go, can you afford Provorov, Makar, Sanheim, Myers, And
that looks a little worse
Cam
when you
York,
look at the fact that Provorov got $6 million. Like I could afford Provorov and Makar if Provorov's only making $6 million.
Yeah, I guess, but well, I mean, even further down the line, though, because eventually you're going to get into their prime years, and somebody's going to need more money.
Things are going to get stupid for sure. You mentioned Sean Couturier returning to the lineup today. Mm-hmm. Overall, what did you see out of Coots?
I saw a guy who, in the first period in particular, it was a feeling out process. I was a little bit surprised that they used him on the fourth line early on. And I know why they did it, because it was a feeling out process. And he might, I wonder if in his case, like Phil Myers to an extent, because I think Phil Myers it was the 2 Islander games when he came back. And it was like, that seemed kind of fast for what you said the injury was.
Yeah, we heard week to week with Phil Myers, and he's back.
Right. And he was back within like a week or two. And it was and it was week to week, and it was kind of like a speculate what you think the week to week is going to be, because they said it was a fractured rib, and he later corrected it and said it was more of a cartilage issue, and it can't get any worse, so I'm going to play. Okay. All right. So if it wasn't a fracture, then maybe that does take a little less time to heal, whatever. And in Couturier's case, it was longer than not longer than it seemed. It was like longer than initially expected, because
it felt like an eternity from here.
It was longer than it seemed, but it was not. I want to call it longer than expected, because they said at least 2 weeks, and I kind of tried to hint that. And I kind of tried to hint that just because it says 2 weeks, you got to be banking on something a little bit bigger than this.
And we even heard at the time, we didn't hear 2 weeks. We heard 2 weeks minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And the other weird thing is that, yeah, we heard about it on Saturday, but there was no progress report on Sean Couturier. All of a sudden, he was just at practice and leading stretches at the end, and boom, he's playing tomorrow, by the way.
Well, I go back to, I believe it was Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday because they had an off day completely on Monday. And on Tuesday, instead of Alain Vigneault speaking, Chuck Fletcher spoke. And Chuck Fletcher said, probably about 7 to 10 days away. And I actually saw people on Twitter going, knowing Couturier, it's going to be 4 to 7. And it was 5 days later.
Yep.
And he was back in the lineup. So there you go. You know, if he was closing in on it, he was going to try to play and do what he had to do to get back into the lineup. And I'm not surprised that he was.
If you watch Sean Couturier play hockey for 30 seconds, you know that he's coming back the second he physically can.
Yeah. And it was needed. I mean, I had said, one of the things I said when I did a State of the Flyers show on 97.3, one of the things I said leading up to the start of the season on here was that there's 3 guys they can't afford to lose for a long period of time. And Couturier was one of them. He was the guy at forward that I said, you need to have him around. And it doesn't mean like, because it's funny, like, and it's weird to sit there and say it, like, it feels like it's so long into the season for him to be getting his first goal of the season. But he's only played a game.
Only his third game.
Well, he played a game in 45
really his
seconds.
Second game.
Right. So it's like his second game of the season. So it's like he's playing as well as you could expect him to, you know, and things like that. And look at, you know, the third period to me is what defines him as what he means to the team, because not only does he score the goal right off bat, and it's a hard-working shift, and he's back with guys who you expect him to be with. You know, I know Raffl was out there, but I believe Voracek was out there too as part of that shift. And it's like, well, that's a guy you expect him to be on the ice with.
Michael Raffl had a great game, by the way.
Michael Raffl did have a great game today. But it's that kind of shot, you know, it's a turnaround, you know, the rebound chance, there it is. You know, and pretty much like they were talking about it on the broadcast, and they're right. On cue, he scores a goal. He gets his second goal on an empty netter because he's out there in a defensive situation, and he knows what to do with it when he gets it middle of the ice. All you need realistically, and I know it's from a huge distance, but you need a straight shot.
Sure, and the thing is, Sean Couturier doesn't care, because if he misses, he's Sean freaking Couturier, and he's probably just going to win the face-off.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about it like that. And they
like,
needed his help face-off wise for sure. But
right, but like I said on this show when he went out that if the Flyers struggle while he's gone, Sean Couturier will build his Hart Trophy case. And I'm certainly not saying that he's going to win it or whatever. But if Sean Couturier comes back and we see a lot of these problems get fixed and we stop blowing 2-goal leads to Boston, please, for the love of God, can we stop blowing 2-goal leads to Boston and everybody else? But if those sorts of problems dry up and get solved and Sean Couturier produces at the level we know he can produce, I think the Flyers played sufficiently poorly over the last 2 weeks that Sean Couturier has a Hart Trophy case.
He might. I know where you're trying to go with that. I wouldn't jump that far ahead.
You see the case I'm building here, right?
I know what you're trying to build right now. I mean, let's put it this way.
Because they were bad without him.
They were.
You can't gloss over that. Like, the Flyers played some poor hockey, and their record didn't show it for a while, but the Flyers played some poor hockey.
It's weird to me because I felt that way. I remember sitting here, and I think I told you guys this. I said this to you when we were on the week leading, and I said, played in Boston over the weekend just because just because they were in one of the games, they got 1 point, just because they're 3-2-1 now or whatever. I said, I don't even know if you win the next game against New Jersey that it's completely satisfying unless you dominated it. Like, I don't know if it's completely satisfying. And that was the funny part. They won a game 5-3 and you went, good to get a win, but no, not satisfying.
It's New Jersey. It should have been way easier than that.
I think it would have looked better if it was 5-2. You know, that late goal really blemishes it because that late goal kind of even tells you somehow you still found a way to make that look interesting at the end.
You made it 5-2. Yeah.
5-2 to me was, look, you earned a third period goal from Nolan Patrick in that game. Then you earned another one from Farabee in that game by, turnovers or whatever. You created your opportunities there, and you were up 4-2. It's late, and you got an empty net goal. Realistically, it was a 5-2 final, right, and you gave up a late goal. So but it wasn't dominant from, like, you really needed the goaltending again to get you there, right. And that was the thing. The 3-1 win, better, but still not completely satisfying because, again, what you're having trouble with is not the goal scoring side of it. A 3-1 win looks great, does it not? You know, like a 3-1 win looks really good. It means you didn't give up a lot of offense. You scored timely goals. You got everything.
Goals, yeah.
Right. You got everything you think you needed, right? Until you go and you look and you realize that New Jersey had 34 shots and you had 17.
And it was,
and you go,
and you were fighting it by the skin of your teeth to get out of there with 2 points.
And you're going, I'm glad Carter Hart looks good, because that's one thing that needed to happen after the Boston weekend was you needed Carter Hart's confidence to come back a little bit.
Yep. And we saw Brian Elliott.
And making 34 on 35 is definitely a way to do it. Yep. But you go, that's not good enough either. And then they played the Islanders on Saturday. And you took a step in the right direction because you allowed 27 or 28 shots. And you go, that's not bad, all things considered, especially when you consider that I believe at the second period mark of that game, it was 16, and they started to pull away a little bit midway through, and you go 16 through 2 is kind of in the neighborhood of where you want to be, but you only have 10 through
especially
2 periods.
Against a team like the Islanders.
Right. And you only have 10 through 2 periods. That's still not cutting it for me. So you're not liking that, you know?
Yeah. Shot volume has been a problem for this team. And at one point I looked up today and they had a graphic up and the Flyers had 5 goals on 15 shots.
Yes.
And that's great when it happens and all.
The funny thing to me is that the Boston games, for as much as I know it's going to be profiled that, you know, these were 2 losses. They were, you know, again,
they were better games than today's victory over Washington.
The thing about the shot totals, in especially, you know, the first, in both of them, but I'll talk about the first one first. You come out and you're getting outshot in the first 10 minutes of the game against Boston on Wednesday. I believe something like 5-2. Or 5-1.
The Flyers went a while without a shot.
They didn't get a shot until almost halfway through the first period, and Boston had like 4 or 5 in that time. But you finished the period tied at 8 apiece in shots in the first period. In the second period, you gave up 13 shots to Boston, but you came back and you had 11 of your own, and it's like, not going to fault you for it. You know, that's respectable.
You can't argue about 21 to 19.
You're doing the right things. And in the third period, I will give the Flyers this because they had 6 and they get to 25. And Boston ends up with 12, but Boston's coming down the stretch going, we're down by 2. You got to push. And yes, the shot total is going to go up because of it. And they had power play time. They had a lot of power play time. So you got to give them that.
A lot of power
play time. So by the end of it, it's 35-25. It looks like a big margin, but for most of the game, you were right there with them. I was really impressed with the Friday game. And I know they lost the game 2-1, but 7-5 in the first period. They allowed 8 and they only got 4 in the second period. So they're down 13-4. But in the third period, you do everything right. Yeah. You get off to a good start. You keep the pressure on. You're taking shots. It's 13-10. You outshoot them 24-23. You actually do what you need to do against this team. It just wasn't enough because that was the game where your 24 shots this time around, like that time around, couldn't solve a really good goalie who was on his game, who you felt like you needed to make a perfect play against, and you weren't getting the best quality of shots to. You took 23 shots in today's game and you scored 7 goals. How does that work? You know, right. Some of it's the goalie you're playing against, obviously.
Yeah, Friday we definitely saw the you have to be perfect to beat Tuukka Rask version of Tuukka Rask. But I said it in my post-game show or my post-game video. Friday was probably the best 60-minute effort of the season, even better than today's game against Washington.
Yep.
Obviously, you saw a win today and you saw a loss on Friday. But I think for 55-ish minutes, the Flyers played really good hockey on Friday.
Well, and that's the thing, because I don't like people who sit there and say this team isn't good. You can sit there and say the defense has problems. You can sit there and say the forwards defensively have lacked in responsibility, and that leads to problems in the defensive zone. You know, Nick Backstrom's goal today, anyone, you know.
Certainly.
You know, and part of it is, you know, and I texted this to you guys in the group chat, that part of that was that's Gostisbehere's guy who goes to the net. He's got to retreat and take the guy going to the net. But
Shane Gostisbehere has been who we think he is.
In the last few, yeah, I'll say that. You know, he's had his moments, but he's also, you know, I liked him better on the second pairing today than I did on the first one. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it takes a little bit of the responsibility off of him. I don't love that he's playing with Justin Braun all the time. I feel like that's kind of a recipe for disaster.
Certainly. But, although it's funny that you mentioned that, because Sunday's game against Washington, who was the best pair? We had Travis Sanheim.
Justin Braun had a great game.
Yeah, we had Travis Sanheim as a late scratch, undisclosed, day-to-day. We don't know much about it. It's the COVID era.
Yep.
But
I keep checking the list today too, just to see if something comes up while we're recording to find out.
The lineup ended up including Braun, Hag as a pair.
Yep.
And defensively speaking, they're probably your best pair on Sunday against the
Capitals. I don't know if in the beginning it didn't have it as Braun Hag as a pair, but I think what happened was this, especially in the third period, I think everything was just shuffled back up. And then I think we did start to see Braun Hag a lot, or see it in spurts every so often. I mean, there were times where I saw, and I've seen it in a lot of the games, and some of it has to do with penalty kill, but they only took one penalty in this game, and it lasted all of 30 seconds before there was a goal scored. So, I didn't, you don't expect to see the Gostisbehere-Gustafsson pairing, which happened a couple times, which doesn't that scream disaster to you?
If you're anywhere other than the offensive zone, you're concerned about those two being on the ice. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
But I do agree. It was probably the best process that you've had in a game for 60 minutes, and the thing about Wednesday's game is that you did play a game with better process to an extent. You didn't look good in the first period, and you survived it because your goalie was really good. And then, especially outside of the first 12 seconds when you get scored on right away.
Whew, yeah.
But then you play out the second period, it kind of starts to come your way, and then you do make something happen and you get a goal.
The tide shifts for sure.
Right. And early on in that third period, I think the tide shifts even more when Jake Voracek scores right away. And then you're playing out the rest of the period and your goalie's giving you everything you want again. You're surviving the waves that come towards you in that game. And then you get an opportunity and you get an odd man rush and you score off of that. And now there's 12 minutes left in the game or something like that. Or it was something close to that, 12, 11 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
And you're up 3-1 on Boston. And you look like you're in a position. And I remember having the thought while I was sitting there going, they're going to find a way to win this game again, in the sense that there was a stretch of time where it didn't look good, but you're going to find a way again, and you're going to do something right for a couple of minutes, and it's going to open up a lead, and you're going to have the lead for the rest of the way out. And somehow that's going to result in 2 more points again, and it's going to be really insane if it results in 2 points in regulation against this team.
We wanted what we saw today out of Washington.
Yeah.
Where the team puts their foot on the pedal and leaves Washington behind after they've beaten them, basically.
Kind of. And not only that, but it was, you knew that the push was going to be coming in some capacity, but it was really important to finish out that game. And there were two, the two really undisciplined penalties were Aube-Kubel's closing the hand on the puck, because you got to avoid them.
Yeah,
it's like today's game. You can't have too many men on the ice happen. You can't have bench minors happen.
No.
If you have to take a penalty because it prevents a good scoring chance, then you do it. It might lead to a power play goal, but you take the opportunity that you might kill a penalty. You can't shoot yourself in the foot by taking a penalty like that and letting it lead to a goal. The Hayes one, yes, it's questionable, and I believe the way I phrase it is, it wasn't a you called that, it was a you called that now. Why with 2:01 left are you making a penalty call like that when you let a lot of stuff go?
Right.
In a game like this, when you let a lot go. The one that really I can't let go, though, and and we've already talked about him earlier in this show, so he's redeemed
heavily.
He's redeemed himself big time in the last 2 games in my mind, because he was better, and he took a penalty in the Friday game too, but he was better in that game toward the close, and he was better in this game, obviously.
And we're talking about
Scott Lawton took an interference penalty, and the problem I have with it, and I've referred to it in this way, is, okay, they get the tying goal on a power play goal on a penalty that you will call questionable, and I understand why it's called questionable.
It's frustrating, for sure.
There's 15 seconds left in regulation. The one thing you have to do is play the next 15 minutes and just make sure it gets to overtime. Play one good shift. And I don't even you could have picked anybody to put on the ice. You just need one good shift to get it to overtime.
That's not even a good shift. That's win the faceoff, flip the puck down the ice, basically.
Close to, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Close, man. Win the faceoff back, one D-to-D pass.
But the reason I say win one good shift is because I don't care if the shift lasts 10 seconds or lasts a minute and 10 seconds. You just have to play to the next whistle the right way and do the right things. And you can come out of that and say, I know what happened in the last 8 minutes, but we're a good 3-on-3 team.
Yep.
Let's go out there and find a way to win this one too. And you can change the tide on it and say, instead of it being 2-1 the other way, now Boston gets 2 more points. You get only 1. You kind of make up for you almost make up for the shootout loss by reversing the roles. And you go, now we're even. Now we have 2. You have 1 of this game. You have 4 from the previous one. So we have 3 from our season series. You have 5. It's not as bad of a margin. It's a 2-point margin again.
Right.
Which is, and knowing how that one game went, you go, that's more than acceptable going into the Friday game. It probably builds up your confidence going into the Friday game too. Right. But instead, you're kind of left to cower because of the fact that, but this is what I mean when I sit there and I was talking about how there's people who say this is not a good team, or and things like, and there are things they do that they don't do well.
Sure.
But why would you, there's no reason for finding a way to win as often as you have. You've played 13 games, you have 8 wins. You don't lose 5 games, and you definitely don't lose 1 game to every other team in the division, with the exception of the New York Rangers, who you haven't played yet, and lose the other 4 to the Bruins and not be able to determine what the scenario is here. I don't care how ugly this game looked this afternoon against Washington. You won the game. It means you've got something on this team. You can keep up with this team. You can beat this team. What it's saying is you can't beat the Boston Bruins.
And you managed to keep them without getting a point, which in a world where they're in your division and they're one of the teams you expect to be competing with for the crown of said division.
The timing of Couturier's empty net goal was crucial because when you're down to a minute and a half left, that whether it's, and the 2 guys I had my eye on anyway, were whether it's Ovechkin or Karlsson, because it seemed like the way to do this was going to be take it from out high, take the shot from a distance.
We saw them work that point shot all game.
Right. And I'm thinking, doesn't matter which one of them it is, but if either one of them scores a goal in the next 20 seconds and it's a minute and 15 left, there's too much time left. And we're going to start having this conversation. I knew let's put it this way, I knew 5-4 wasn't good enough. And it ended up holding up, obviously, because 7-4 is final, but I knew 5-4 wasn't enough because I'm like, you can't sit on that lead and say Ovechkin's not going to find a way to at least create the tying goal.
Not with the team, not with the effort you've had out of this team this year. You've shown that third period leads are not safe.
Right. And that's the problem. You can't do that and expect to come out and it was there. That's why I think, and that's another thing I think was huge about this game, is it's not just the win in regulation. It's the fact that you took the lead early in the third period, had to play the whole period with it, and late in the game, you got the goal. That goal by Lawton that capped off his hat trick felt very reminiscent of the second Buffalo game, because it was a game where as long as it was 1-0, you are one bad bounce away from this turning the other way and them getting their confidence back. And instead, you scored a goal that made them feel like that's it.
You got to dagger them.
Done. Yep. 2:09 left. We're down 2. It's not happening today. I can't believe it's not happening today because of the way that the top line's playing. 4 points for Ovechkin. 4 points for Wilson, 3 for Backstrom, I think is what it was. Something like that. And you're like, it's not happening though. It's a loss. How is it a loss? You know what I mean? And that's why you can say that about the Flyers. How is it a win? How were the 2 games against the Islanders wins? How were even the 2 against the Devils wins? But you strung together, after the weekend in Boston where everything seemed to go wrong in the second game and Carter Hart smashing his stick and it looks like it's all going downhill because 3-1-0 turned into 3-2-1 pretty quickly.
Pretty quick. Yep.
You won 4 in a row. And you won 4 in a row and it turned it into 7-2-1 pretty quickly. And now you're toward the top. And that's the thing, I don't know. I believe Boston next plays tomorrow night, on Monday night, I should say, to try to spell it out for people. Never mind. I'm wrong. I just happen to look forward to it. They're off for a while though. Hold on. They were supposed to be playing. They had postponements.
Right.
I forgot about that.
That was the Devils.
For them, possibly. I'm going to go look to see because they're now off until Wednesday. They play the Rangers on Wednesday.
Okay. They were supposed to play the Boston.
They were supposed to play today, and I think Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason those aren't on. Okay. Either way,
there's been a lot of them, so that's why it's not easy to go and
the COVID postponements. The COVID postponements have come to the Metro.
Yeah, should we talk about those?
Do you want to talk about the New Jersey Buffalo situation?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about that. What I was going to talk about is the 4 games that got moved because that's more pertinent to the Flyer side of things. But
I think the 2 are too intertwined. They're
intertwined, and I will say this: consider it a blessing that the Flyers played a game today, because now they're over. Now, at this point, they're 10 days out from their last meeting with the Devils.
Right.
They probably are clean at this point. And they made it through without any issues. And that's a big deal. And that's a big deal because that was fresh off of Shane Gostisbehere's reinsertion into the lineup from being on the COVID list and later on being confirmed that he did have COVID.
Right.
Apparently, by the way, this was a news story earlier this week. I don't know if you heard this one. Chuck Fletcher had COVID in January.
No.
And apparently lived in a hotel for a week to stay away from his family and everybody else, and has since made a recovery and he's fine now. But
that's good to hear.
But he apparently had it too. And I thought that was really interesting for two reasons. One, here's a guy who's the general manager of the team. Right. And I get it. He doesn't have to be around the players physically. They can have virtual meetings and all that stuff. But I thought it was amazing how a player like Gostisbehere, who was in the middle of a training camp setting, could be pulled from the lines, from the ice one day. He's not out there, and he becomes a player on this list, and nobody else ended up on the list. Somehow it became a one-off.
Yeah, the NHL protocols certainly aren't perfect, and we've had enough issues with them recently that something's obviously not perfect. But the Flyers have gotten lucky, and they've really gotten lucky. And in the Flyer circumstances, the protocols are doing what they have intended.
So here's the story. So the Flyers play the Devils on that Thursday night game. They win 3-1. And the next day, Travis Zajak's on the COVID list.
It's insane that they avoided this.
And I tweeted this and said, well, that's something to watch because he just played 2 games against them. So let's just watch and see what happens. And there really wasn't any reason to be crazy concerned about it because it was one guy and you went, well, he just played against him, but there's not enough information.
What are the odds?
And you'll never get enough information because one guy could mean you went home and you were around somebody who now says, I've been in contact, and now you're told you can't be around the team.
Right. There's so much precautionary quarantining that everything's being taken with a grain of salt.
Well, and the other thing that was not alarming was that the Devils went on to play Saturday night.
Their games continued. Yeah.
Right. They went on to play Saturday afternoon against Buffalo, and then they played Sunday afternoon against Buffalo. Now,
under some protests from the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, a little bit, but I don't think it was for the first game. I think the Zajac one didn't do anything. It was when in between the 2 games, which were a part of a back-to-back, by the way.
Sunday, right.
Now Kyle Palmieri's on the list, and he has to come out of the lineup too. And now there's a connection here because now it's 2 guys in a matter of 3 days, and you're going.
Now you know it's in the room. It wasn't just Travis Zajac caught it from his wife's sister's cousin.
And the Sabres didn't want to play that game. They didn't want to play that Sunday game. They did. They lost. The Devils won that game.
But they did ask the NHL, why are we playing this, essentially, and asked the NHL to postpone it.
But all of a sudden, in the next 3 to 4 days, I believe it would have been, the Devils have gone from, the Devils had a handful of guys already on the list. Like Mackenzie Blackwood was on the list. It never affected anything else. He was on the list for a long time going up to it. And there were guys who were on the list, like Connor Carrick was on the list and his wife was having a baby, so he was out for that reason. And it was easy to spell. Aaron Dell was picked up for them off of waivers, I believe it was, or something like that. And he's going through a COVID protocol because he can't be around the team for a couple days until he's cleared and all that stuff. So he's on the list too. So you're going, they have 5 guys on the list, but there's 3 guys you can go, well, he's been on it for a while. And the other 2 are part of something different. Like they made a reason for it to be something different. And then all of a sudden, I think 6 guys got at it in one day. And it eventually snowballed into from 6 to 11 to 17.
And Buffalo sitting in there on the other side going, we played most of these guys last night and want to play and are supposed to play them again tonight.
And Buffalo's sitting there going, well, we really need to monitor this now. And then all of a sudden could report 6 to 7 of their own. And then that included later on, or there were 7 players on the list by the whole time the whole thing was over, which is not completely over for them anyway, but as it stands, I should say. And their head coach Ralph Kruger is tested positive as well. So now it's the head coach, 7 players are on the list, and the Devils have 17. And now you're left scrambling because at the same time, 2 teams within the same division have had to postpone at least 4 games.
Yep. And one of the things that has kind of come out of this that kind of leaves a little bit of a stain on the NHL, if these things, however the circumstances resolve here, at that Devils Buffalo game on Sunday, the second game of the back-to-back, the game that the Buffalo Sabres were playing under a little bit of protest, the NHL decided to remove the glass from the back of the benches, and they said it was to help promote airflow, and it was all for COVID guidelines. Later in the week, they actually made that change across the NHL and told all teams that they needed to remove the glass behind the bench. And I think there were a couple other like minor little changes. I'm sorry, players aren't allowed to show up more than I think an hour and 45 minutes before the game. And they implemented a whole bunch of new little policies. There is some whisper abound, and this is obviously all unconfirmed rumor. There is rumor abound that the NHL knew about Ralph Kruger's positive test and still allowed the Sunday game to continue. And
See, I didn't think it had anything to do with him specifically. I thought it had more to do with Palmieri, and then the exposure around it had to do with the rest of the team starting to get it, and that included Kruger. That's the impression I'm under anyway.
I think Kruger popped a rapid test day of.
Huh.
And again, this is all unconfirmed, whispering on Twitter type stories. So do not take this with any sort of reporting background. I heard some rumors that the NHL knew that Kruger had popped a positive test, and the game Sunday still continued. And if that's the case, obviously, again, I don't know.
Right.
But
now,
if that's the case, that's a tough spot.
Now, there's another, because you mentioned the thing about the glass being taken out from behind. They don't want anybody sitting behind the benches anyway.
Right.
The limited, one of the other big ones is the limited amount of time that guys have to show up to a game. They're like supposed to not show up until an hour and 45 minutes before, unless they're getting treatment or things like that. Yep. One of the things that did come out this week that I found to be something very interesting about, and this is at least about the flyer setting. I can't speak for every other arena. I can't say how it's done every other place. But the Wells Fargo Center got a rating and got this really high health and safety rating because they have a system in place that circulates the air in the inner bowl of the seating area of the arena and every 30 minutes. Well, guess where I'm sitting when I go to these home games, by the way? I'm in the inner arena bowl, and I'm going, now you just made me feel 10 times safer than I already was because no one's near me anyway. I'm masked up the whole time. But now you're telling me that they circulate the air in the building every 30 minutes too?
And that was another part of the new COVID guidelines is that every team has to have a system like that with HEPA filters and blah, 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 circulation, at least in and around the benches. I don't know what's been talked about for the lower bowl. But
I heard it wasn't that they have to have it; it's that they can explore the possibility of getting them in place. It might be soon that they do have to have it, but I think for the immediacy of what they were trying to do, it was you need to now explore what you can do to put portable air filters behind where the players are on the benches.
What I heard was that they had to have a plan in place to have them installed within 30 days. So like the plan has to be.
Yeah, that part makes sense. The 30-day thing makes complete sense because I think the 30-day thing also made sense for because let's put it this way. I imagine the Flyers don't play another home game until Thursday night against the Devils this week. Okay. Which means they still have one more in Washington, but they didn't have a lot of time between when this happened, when these new protocols came out, and when everything had to be in place.
Friday night game against Boston, I think.
Right. So it was Wednesday to Thursday to Friday. So Wednesday night, everything was the way it used to be. Right.
Right.
So they had to move, Gritty was on a stage that was a few rows up of that same section, though, behind the benches. They moved him. He was up in the mezzanine level.
He's away. Yeah.
Really far away. And they had Lauren Hart sang the anthem from a corner, the entranceway of the corner section to stay away from that. They've been hosting the families, frontline workers, one family every game or something like that. They were sitting in a suite instead of in that section that they created on a stage behind that spot too. I would imagine that they will explore ways to figure out how to get all of that together, whether it's to make that all not one side because the media is on the opposite side behind the penalty boxes, and the mascot and the anthem singer who's only there for one part of it anyway, and the family who's there to watch. You could stick the family in a suite every single time and call that done.
And I think at this point, that's probably the plan moving forward.
But the thing, I'm not saying that Gritty's the most important thing in the game by any stretch, but
I don't think the Flyers lobbied for Gritty to be allowed in the building.
But I don't think you want him to be away from that far away from everything. I think it was because it was a very template. They created this elaborate stage thing, and everybody's got the when they don't have fans, everybody's got the tarps over the seats, so it looks clean and looks nice on the broadcast, and it definitely does for sure.
Yeah. The presentation is.
I think what they need to do
solid.
is they need to find a place where they can give him the stage, or not the stage, but something. And for all I know, maybe that's the end boards at the end of a section. You know what I mean? Build a stage at the end of, a spot at the other end.
I'm surprised they haven't put him out in the concourse, like where they have that little stage set up. Right over by client.
Probably just because it's not in the actual arena. So I don't think they have the one thing I don't think they have, unless it's the ones that are typically put down by the glass in the corners. I don't think they have people walking around with roaming cameras.
Okay.
That. I think it's whatever you can get on your screen from the stationary cameras that they've set up, which are already in a unique spot to begin with, because you're trying to do this. Like, you have the ones that are where they normally are positioned, but I think you also set some up in a spot where it's not commonplace.
Oh, sure. They've done a lot of cool things with camera angles this year.
They have. And actually, believe it or not, you know what I should mention? One of the things I like that they haven't done is they haven't done anything with RoboCams, except for the ones maybe behind the nets. Where it's like, the RoboCam on the arm that like can glide along the rink. Like, I think they would have the rest of us, like, for the ones that are there in person to watch, I think that we'd be driven nuts by it.
I'd be willing to bet a large sum of money that is different in Lake Tahoe. You will absolutely see drone cameras in Lake Tahoe.
The rendering that they showed on the broadcast during the Sunday game, the Flyers-Washington game, was outstanding. I can't wait to see the way this looks. I want to see the time lapse videos as they build this thing, because I sure hope that as it comes together, that the scenery is just as good as it seems like it's going to be, because I'm really interested in that. But I will say, to kind of start to try to put a bow on this, and not only that, but to talk about the Lake Tahoe game for a minute. Look at who it's against, and this is going to be
Boston Bruins.
This is going to be one of the settings that it's one of these teams that this is the next opportunity, and I don't know what they have to do differently per se, because here's the thing: you've blown 3 leads to this team this year. That says that you can be in a position to win a game against this team, that you can do things that set it up for success, that you can be in a position to win against them. Like, there's only been 2 games this season, and both of them had the same final score, which we don't need to repeat because we talked about it enough the last time I was on. But they were against Buffalo and they were against Boston. And the Buffalo game, it was kind of you were due for this to happen. It was only your 3rd game of the season.
It was a dud.
And you were allowed to have a dud, and you were allowed to have a night where you kind of had to get the realization that you have to be ready every night. Doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you have a bad game, you are going to have a bad game, and it's going to look bad on the scoreboard. And it doesn't matter who you're playing.
Yep.
And the one against Boston was kind of looked close for 2 periods when it wasn't that close, and you got what you deserved, kind of thing. And they really took it to you. But you've played Boston 3 other times, and you've had leads at some point. You just haven't been able to finish it up. You've made every other game competitive. And I was thinking the same thing even during this game, because I was starting to think, okay, when it's a 5-4 final and Washington wins it because you make some mistake at the end too, or if you, not blow a lead, but it'll look that way because you were up 4-3 late in the 2nd period. We can still quantify it as a game where you were competitive, but not able to get the job done. And look at who it's against this time, because now it's not just the Boston side. Now it was, here's your first chance to do something against Washington. You can be not completely satisfied with the way that things happen or the process or anything like that. But if you are getting the results and you are an 8-3-1 or 8-3-2 team through 13 games, I'll take the 8 wins and the 18 points all day, every day, especially now that I might get to see what it's like with Sean Couturier back. That was probably the bigger thing. I had a really hard time sitting here saying this is a bad team when you are winning as many games as you are, because to me that
you're missing your best player.
You're missing one of your best players, but also you are missing there's something about this where you're still trying to get a feel for things, and you still haven't played with the most optimal lineup yet. I even felt like one of the things, and I told you this right before we hit record on this, that one of the things I was going to say about the games against New Jersey and eventually going into, the weekend against the Islanders, was that it might have been like when you played the Islanders on that Saturday, it might have been the first time you had a legitimate top 4 among your defensive core, because Phil Myers was back after missing a decent amount of time, and you go, with Shane Gostisbehere in there, that might be as close as you get to a top 4 for right now, considering what's out there and what you can try to do. That might be it. And if that's it, and it looked as good as it did against the Islanders, you've got a shot to at least piece something together where you're like, okay, that's what we might be able to do to try to get by for right now. When Gostisbehere has a decent enough game and Provorov's on his game, because Provorov wasn't on his game sometimes in some of these other ones. I can tell you that. Like he was having just much struggle. He was having some struggles against the Bruins, just like Gostisbehere was.
Right.
But when you can do all of that, you know, I think it sets you up for the fact that you're in a position to not only to be successful, but to sit there and say, okay, that's as close to the most optimal lineup we can have. And maybe that's when, you know, now that you've got Sean Couturier back, maybe we can see that, because I'll agree, wasn't Carter Hart's best game. I think he should have stopped. He should have stopped Ovechkin's second goal. He probably could have played the Backstrom one a little better, but was thrown into a really awkward situation with no coverage.
Bad turnover, tough spot.
You know, it is what it is. But I'm saying that because of the fact that I sit there and I go, I feel like, you know, we've seen shades of his best, but we still haven't quite seen his best yet. And we're, you know, it's going to get there, though, because I think he shows signs of things he can do. I mean, he was outstanding in the third period of this game on Sunday, which he needed to be to keep you in this game. So you take it for what it is and you hope for the best. And, you know, I'll just throw up the graphic that we have, the one more we have, which is what's coming up later this week. And you've got a few different ones coming up. This Washington game is important to me. Then the 2 against New Jersey are going to be pretty substantial as well, because of the fact that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go back and check the Devils schedule really quick, but this is going to be the first game since that Buffalo stuff.
Right.
You're going to be facing a team. You're possibly facing a team later this week that you don't know their status when it comes to COVID protocols. You don't know how many players they have available. It could very well be close to a minor league team playing.
Yep. And you know that any NHL players that are there are likely to be pretty rusty.
Right. So you have an opportunity to get past Washington, maybe win another game against a team that's ranked in the top 3 of the division. And then here's that shot to put New Jersey away again on your home ice. And then you have the Rangers as a really quick turnaround. You know?
And like you mentioned, that is the first time the Flyers will see the Rangers. But I did want to put
the Rangers, and it's also that's one of those. I forgot to mention, that's one of the scheduling differences too. That was a game that got moved up a couple days. They had another one against Buffalo at the end of the month that was supposed to be a Friday. Now it's a Saturday, so it creates a back-to-back. They lost a back-to-back that was supposed to be Buffalo at the end of March. And now it's back-to-back Buffalo, then to New Jersey. And that's, again, everything with that it was always one day later or a couple days sooner or whatever. The one that's really out there is the Devils one down the line, where it was supposed to be April 20th, and now it's April 1st, which is what creates that back-to-back. So that's a little interesting. But I find it there's 2 things I find interesting. First of all, they're all road games, so they're not affecting the Flyers' home schedule any. Their home schedule is what it is. This is all part of the road trip stuff. And aside from the Ranger game that got bumped a couple of days here, it's pretty much setting up games against teams that may not be there at the end, that you're getting them down the stretch in unique situations. So I hope that is a good sign of good things to come. And not only that, but some of them that move them up, like the Ranger game being moved up this upcoming or to Sunday of next week, which will change the schedule for the following week. It gives you 3 days off before a game, then 2 before Lake Tahoe, then 2 more before you play again, then 2 more after that. Like, you're getting a gap where you get some rest and get some, you know, maybe some health and some rejuvenation there. And the same thing happens later on in the season.
Maybe even a practice or 2.
Well, yeah, practice time for sure. And then again, it's the same thing. When that Devils game got moved off of the 20th, now you have a 4-day break between games. In one situation, you're going to play 3 over the course of a span of 8 days or something like that. There's some valuable.
All of this is subject to change with future reschedules, which I'm sure are going to happen.
There's no guarantees that anything is set in stone or anything like that. So we'll see. But the good news is that it hasn't affected the Flyers directly.
Yet
the games that are but the games that are being moved up. I think that the reason I think that's the case is because I think the Flyers are doing things that are smarter when it comes to being away from the rink. I don't know what's going on with other teams. I'm not trying to speculate on that, but I'm wondering what teammates are doing or what they're, trying to do that could affect something where someone goes into a situation and gets it,
right?
As opposed to the Flyers doing things that I think they are just being more mindful of it, that they're coming in, they're getting tested regularly, they're knowing that they're okay, and they're not doing anything to risk that. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, obviously we're hoping that's the case, and we're hoping that these players are taking the season as seriously as we need them to.
Yep.
So we're wrapping up here, and we're working our way out of here. But I did want to mention one thing, kind of circling back on the point you started on a couple of minutes ago.
Okay.
The blown leads against Boston.
Yep.
There is something that all 3 of those games have in common.
Okay.
and you compared it to today's game against Washington and why the result was different. So what's different between those Boston games and today's Washington game?
I'm trying to pinpoint it. I can tell you.
It's one very specific thing.
Okay, because there's a key difference between the game against Boston on Wednesday and the game today, and it's not going to apply to Friday, but they were more disciplined in this game.
I am talking about the presence of number 14.
Okay, well, yeah, obviously. And I do think that's, like I said, I'd love to see, I can't wait to see him play in the Lake Tahoe game, because I think that's going to be a measuring stick for not just them against Boston, but here's the full lineup. You haven't played with this lineup against Boston yet. And as long as everybody's healthy, which I'm not trying to say I don't see how, obviously, because COVID's the risk.
We have no idea how healthy any team's going to be.
But the thing that I do know that I can say with certainty right now is you do have 5 games between now and then, and that's 5 games left from now and between now and then to get Sean Couturier back into a rhythm, to make sure Phil Myers and Travis Sanheim are fully healthy again, to make sure Carter Hart's okay, because he had a little bit of a moment the other day where he was not even able to back up the one game, but it wasn't his game anyway. And
the reason I brought up Sean Couturier here is because I said when he went out that this team was going to severely miss Sean Couturier, and that I said after they started blowing leads that this team severely missed Sean Couturier.
Yeah. We
saw today, not only did he score 2 goals in the third period to kind of help ice the win, but I think more importantly, it's not necessarily Sean Couturier, sure, but the team was playing better with a lead. And this team was playing to win. The teams in Boston were playing to not lose.
I can see that a little bit. I mean, there's still elements of survival mode in this, and their power play was terrible.
Well, sure. But I'm willing to give Sean Couturier a little bit of credit, especially when you look at the Boston games and you can point at one of the games and say, here's 3 power play goals. Right? How many power play goals does Boston score in that game if Sean Couturier is on the penalty kill? Probably still 2 because they're Boston and they're insane. But maybe they don't tie the game, right? Maybe they don't score in overtime. I'm going to keep beating this drum until Sean Couturier wins the Hart Trophy. But if the Flyers turn out to be a very, very good team, like we kind of think they are at this point, at least I think they are. I assume you're in a similar ballpark. Then I think Sean Couturier is going to start getting some national attention.
Okay, I hear you. I mean, look, the thing that's fact right now, based on everything we've seen, is that this division, and I know that they're, because Boston's off for a while with their rescheduling and all that stuff. This division runs through Boston right now, and the reason it runs through Boston is because I don't care if the Flyers are tied with them in points right now, and I know they have 2 more games played than Boston does anyway, so it's not like a true tie. But regardless, I don't care if they're tied with them in points. The fact of the matter is that Boston has 8 of their 18 points by playing the Flyers, and the Flyers have 2 of their 18 by getting to overtime against the Bruins.
Right, not even winning them.
Right, that's the difference.
The fact that you've taken 2 points out of a possible 8 in the season series so far.
But the Flyers have played 13 games this year. Take the 4 away that they played against Boston, and you've got 8 wins in 9 games, and you're going, that's 16 points out of 18 against everybody else. And you play Boston, you have 2 out of 8.
Yep.
And not from a win. That's the thing.
The good news is Flyers don't have to play the Boston Bruins this week. And I think that's a good time to get us out of there.
Yeah, because
certain people have a Super Bowl to watch.
Yes, well, and because like I said, the fact that they play Washington again, they've shown they can beat Washington. Maybe they'll come out and play with a little bit more structure this time. But you're going to get a possibly depleted New Jersey team, and then you get to see the Rangers for the first time, and the Rangers certainly don't come without flaws.
They've been pretty hot since they cut the dead weight in the locker room.
Well, I don't know if I would call it pretty hot, because I think they had some games moved around too with the postponement. So I think they've also been kind of sitting around lately since that happened, which could play into the advantage as well. I mean, they had 2 days off. They did beat Washington the other day, which kind of shows you where they're at. But they're going to come in. They might come in a little not depleted, but they might come in a little tired because they got Boston on the schedule coming up too. And that could change things around. And it's not like the addition of Lafreniere all of a sudden turned that team into a juggernaut. No. They still had their moments. and I don't get too hopped up over beating Pittsburgh or their win against Washington. I felt like was kind of more or less, just they did a lot of things right, and I think Washington was due for one.
For sure. I think we definitely have to get out of here. It's time to hit the bricks. We could talk all day about Washington and Boston.
No, we don't need
how
to
this
do all that.
division's going to look. We're going to get our first look at the New York Rangers next Sunday, and our show next Sunday will probably be recorded before that game. So make sure to follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. There will be a pregame video from Kevin on our YouTube channel at YWT Podcast. There will also be a postgame video from me. So you can follow us. You'll get all your updates for that game before and after, even if we don't talk about it on the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can catch all the videos in the meantime. Twitter, where we're at. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. The show is at YWT Podcast. The show can be found everywhere. You can find your podcast as well as on sportstalkphilly.com.
Yep.
And make sure to follow them over at Sports Talk Philly. Sports Talk PHL. Is that it?
Yeah, at Sports Talk PHL on Twitter.
Also at Flyerdelphia. Listen, I've been doing this plug for like a year at this point. You think I would know Sports Talk PHL?
Yeah, no, it's still, there's a lot.
I just had a little brain.
You just have a lot of stuff to plug. That's the problem.
That is the problem. So
it's a good problem to have, though.
Well, listen, the more people ask for, the more we'll start putting out, and the more I'll have to plug.
Yeah, there you go.
In the meantime, we got 4 games between this show, 3 games between this show and the next show, 4 games this week coming up.
Yep.
It's time to go. We hit the quarter mark of the season. Sean Couturier is back. Let's see what the Flyers can do. All right, guys. Until next week. See you later.